Hi everyone, my name's PK, and here I have Steve Elbourn, who's joining me from Brisbane. In this episode, what I did was I put out this post on my Facebook group, Australian Property Investor with PK, and what we did was I was like, I really want authentic, grassroots, real stories from real investors to achieve three things for my audience. One was inspiration, like to kind of G you up, to get you energized to buy property. The second thing was like ideation. You'll hear from Steve and so many other people, and it's like if you can just pick up one idea, one golden nugget, that might just shift your trajectory like by 2 degrees, to use shipping terms, but in 20 years' time, that might mean hundreds of thousands of dollars of difference. And the third reason was realization. I think everyone, not everyone, a lot of people that try to sell stuff in Australia in the property industry, they don't actually cover the downsides of property, or the struggles or hardship, and the mental, I don't know, fortitude that it takes to be an investor for a long time. So ideation, inspiration, and realization. I'm hoping that this episode will bring you just that. But Steve's I actually don't know too much about Steve, if I'm being honest. I'm learning his journey, as are you guys right here as we hit record. So I do know that he volunteered, which I'm very, very grateful for. And Steve, I really appreciate your time today.
No, no problem at all. No problem at all.
Welcome to the Oz Property Investment Mastery Podcast. My name's PK, and I help busy people build passive income by buying top 5% growth and cash flow property and build a portfolio using data without wasting months doing research, spending weekends at inspection or catching flights, or dropping $10,000 to $20,000 on buyer's agents every single time. So if you're confused, lack confidence, and just overwhelmed with all the information and marketing misinformation available online and don't know where to start, then this show is for you. All right, well let's start from the start, because you are in Brisbane, but you are from New South Wales initially. I think you said to me that you bought your first property at 94. I don't know how old you were at that
Yeah,
time, but let's kind of just, where did this all begin for you?
yeah. So basically, it's a bit of a tragic story. So my older brother, he was hit by a car when he was a teenager. He got some compensation for that, but by the time he actually got that through, he was already diagnosed with cancer. So he never actually got to use that money. So we got a bit of a small inheritance, myself, my younger brother, and my mum. And I was able to use that as a deposit to buy a property at Woy Woy, on the Central Coast of New South Wales, just north of Sydney, in my hometown that I grew up. And it's a very much a commuter area at that time. So there's like an hour and a half on the train down to Sydney. There was just no work around. And after about a year, I just got tired of the commute and decided to move to Queensland. I saw all the ads in the paper, because back then there was no internet, so I was always seeing the classified ads like, come to bring you 5 acres in Jimboomba, and thought I'd come up here and buy an acreage property and have a horse and all that kind of thing. So anyway, so I sold the property there to a friend. Didn't make any money on it. Just basically sold it for what I bought it for. Unfortunately, one of those things I wish I had kept it, because I bought it for 120. It's worth about 900,000 now. I came up to Queensland. Just went right up until town of 1770, just looking for a place where I was going to settle, and then came back down and decided to buy in a place called Eagleby, which is near Beenleigh. I knew nothing about the place. There was no research. The only rationale that I had was that it was in between Brisbane and Gold Coast. So I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any employment. So I thought that's a good place to start. So
Right.
so I moved there, lived there for a couple of years, and then decided that I wanted to be closer to the city. And then I moved out and rented that property. And I was doing share accommodation myself in the city. So yeah, rented that property, and then the tenants started being late on rent, and the really bad property manager. I went around for an inspection, and there was holes all, punch holes all on the wall, and you
That was
quite
an Eagleby.
eagerly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and you could quite easily tell that the girl living there was a bit of a junkie of some
Right.
sort.
Right.
Uh, and at that stage, I bought the property there for 75,000, and that was and at one stage, properties in the street actually got down to as low as 45,000. So it actually dropped. So I couldn't sell, and then there was a little bit of a growth spurt. I think around year 2000 in
Mhm.
Brisbane, there was a bit of a growth spurt,
Mhm.
and I was able to realise a huge capital gain of $10,000, and I sold the property. So
Right.
again, could have just kicked out the tenant and kept it, and but at that stage I sold it. In the meantime, not using my money management very well, I'd gone out and used equity out of the property to buy a car,
Right.
etc. So all these kind of common mistakes that, now listening to all these podcasts, I just like, oh yes, I've done that. So by the time I actually sold the property, I didn't really have much left there. So, and then
Right.
I was basically out of the game for, well, up until late 2020. So
And
just
so, like, what? Sorry to interject, but I'm just curious. Like, what was it? Because you had taken equity out to buy a car. Like, why did you decide to sell that property after it had kind of gone up or started to go up around the year 2000?
uh, I just back then I just wasn't very good with money. Just yeah, living paycheck to paycheck. Didn't know much about investing. I just you buy a house and you sell a house. I didn't
Right.
really know the process.
Yeah.
And like I say, at one stage, the actual prices in the street had actually dropped below the cost of what it actually costed to buy.
Yeah.
When I was actually able to sell it, pay off the loan, and get like $10,000 in my bank account, I was like, okay, it's time to sell.
So
So
maybe the mentality was like, oh, what if that drop or that crash in prices happens again? Let me just sort of get out while I can, while I'm
yeah,
still
yeah.
above
And
water.
again, now it's like I just would have wish I would have held on to it.
Yeah.
Um, like again, I'm looking on all the different websites. It's worth probably about 450, 500 now. So
You
you
live
know,
and learn, live and learn.
yeah,
It kind of
that's
reminds
it.
me.
That's it. It just basically kept me out of the game for
Mm.
20 years, and that was my mentality was then like, oh well, I just have to rent. That's kind of where I was at, and I was just rented.
Right, right,
And my lifestyle was just traveling overseas, going out on weekends, and just kind of living for the moment. Yeah.
right. And did you rent because you couldn't afford to buy a principal place of residence, or were you kind of just because of lifestyle reasons you wanted to travel around, travel the world, just be more flexible, not have any debt?
Yeah, it was really just getting the deposit together.
Right.
Again, money management was probably one of the issues, and just spending it on going out for the weekend all the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
and going like I used to travel overseas probably 2 or 3 times a year, uh,
Okay.
and just I enjoyed myself,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
but I just I wish I had saved a little bit more back then and got started, but yeah.
Yeah, and I caught you before you were saying that you were listening to lots of podcasts recently, which is obviously fantastic. I'm just curious because I genuinely don't know. Back in the 90s or even the early 2000s, was property investing like quite popular? I don't know how to use that word properly, but like obviously right now, I don't want to say everyone wants to become a property investor, by no stretch of the imagination do they want to do that, but everyone knows of property investing. Everyone knows of the merits of property investing. Some people can be, some people choose not to be, but at least it's a legitimate way to get ahead. Back, 20, 30 years ago, was it a legitimate way? Like were people talking about investing on at the Sunday
Yeah,
barbecue, or were
it,
you
it,
just not
de-
in those circles? I'm not
No,
sure.
it definitely wasn't in my circle of friends or my family. Basically, we grew up in a housing commission. It wasn't it was a nice housing condition. It was like on the coast. It wasn't like in the slums in Sydney or anything like that.
Sure, sure.
But all my cousins and aunties and uncles, they were in the Sydney ones, like Mount Druitt, things like
Right,
that.
right.
So we never had that kind of topics at the family barbecues, etc.
Mm,
So the only part of property investing that I saw was like seeing the Sunday classifieds with the negative gearing headlines and buy a property in negative gear and things like that. And I believe I even went to a seminar once where they were trying to do the whole negative gearing kind of
yeah.
um, spiel. But we just didn't know anything about money. It wasn't talked about. It wasn't taught at school.
Right.
So it wasn't until I moved to Queensland. As I said, I was out of the game for a while.
Mhm.
Probably, I think it was about, I'm going to say 20 years ago. I did a real estate course, and I was actually a real estate agent for 2 years.
Oh,
So
no.
that kind of educated me a little bit in the ways of property and
Mhm,
got me interest. But again, I didn't have the funds myself to actually go out and
mhm.
purchase a property.
Right.
Probably say I wasn't a great agent. Yeah, I didn't like the cold calling. That was like the showing the people houses was great, but the actual cold calling I hated it.
Yeah, real estate agents have got it easy these days, I reckon. 10,
Yeah,
20
just
years ago, it wasn't quite like this with before
yeah,
the massive influx of migrants and house prices just going up and everything.
yeah. But that gave me a little bit of knowledge about real estate. Uh,
Hmm.
but I just didn't have enough to act on it. So, and then the next part of the journey was, but yeah, basically, like I said, we're just renting. I met my current wife back in 2016. She was from overseas. She came over, and when she got here, we actually got kicked out of our property.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, bad story. I invited a person from my work to stay at my property because he was in between houses. And I went overseas 4 weeks later. I come back and found out that he was actually a bit of a meth head
Oh, no.
and had trashed the property. So, yeah, so police involved. He got charged, etc. But then the real estate found out, and I was evicted from the property.
Yeah.
So we went from there, and for the next 6 months, we lived in this little granny flat underneath a house. And like it was like I don't think it was even a legal room,
Mhm.
but it was just a little place that we could have by ourselves.
Because
And
after you get kicked out, like I assume your references are bad then, and so it's hard to get a new place to rent. Is that how it
yeah,
sort of works?
yeah, I don't know if the owner actually checked the reference. I told the owner the reason why, and
Okay.
he seemed like a reasonable guy, and I just told him the situation, and he
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, it definitely could have been. But again, that was actually good for me because here's my wife who's just come over from overseas, and then she's there, and I'm like, okay, well, she's living in this dump with me. She's
Mhm.
happy, so this one's looks like a keeper,
A keeper.
so yeah, we started from nothing. We were like in this little granny flat underneath, and then we just travelled back and forth because she was on tourist visas, and we'd meet overseas. So again, I was just going through that lifestyle of travelling,
Mhm.
and then she was able to come over here and get her permanent visa, and then um, yeah. So what happened then? So then we were able to rent out an NRAS property.
Right.
And that's where we actually live now. And then just after that, COVID happened. And that's where the opportunities for us came about.
Right. Right. And what do you mean by opportunities for us came about? Because when someone mentions COVID, you automatically think of like job losses and
Yeah,
lockdowns and people
yeah,
doing it hard. So it'd be
yeah, definitely. Like so, I was one of these ones that actually fell in the cracks. So I was full-time hours at my employment, but I was casually employed.
right.
And I also used to do a little bit of part-time Uber on the weekends. So I was a sole trader. and I used to like do 4 hours maybe on a Saturday, Sunday, just a little bit extra
Yeah,
extra
sure.
income. But what that happened is when they did the job, was the job keeper,
Hmm.
$750 a week, because I was a sole trader and I was casually employed, I actually qualified for the job keeper.
Okay.
So I was like straight away, I said to my wife, I think we have a chance here to put this money aside and get together a deposit for a house.
You're right.
So we set about to like, okay, let's do this. Like we've got this income that's free income. I qualify for it. Let's just pull that money aside. We started really tidying up our bank accounts, just cutting out all the unnecessary spending, and just putting money aside each week. And that's when I really started listening to podcasts.
Hmm.
I just so many podcasts, and I'm just around the work. I'm a forklift driver,
Hmm.
so I've got the little earbud in my ear, got the headphones on, and I just go around and I'm just tuning out, listening to all these podcasts.
Quite
And
lucky in that
your
way.
and yours was one that come up in the list. It must have been a sponsored ad or something, but yours was one of those
I
ones
don't
that
do
come.
sponsored ads, but yeah, I get it. No problem.
Yeah. Just the algorithm, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so I just started listening to all these podcasts about investing, and I was just, as you said before, just getting these little nuggets out of each one, and just go,
mhm.
oh yes, okay, yeah, and then the more I listened to them, I could tell that okay, this person's really spooking this type of thing.
Right.
Because, yeah, like if you listen to enough, you can kind of start to peel back the layers and
Yeah.
see what their real motivation is. But that was my motivation, was to basically just get one little bit of information out of each podcast, and I thought
Mhm.
that was worthwhile.
Right.
So yeah, so that was the start, and then the government announced that you can pull money out of superannuation.
Mhm.
And again, I thought, okay, and everyone's like, no, you don't pull out money out of superannuation. And I'm not. So I had to talk to my wife, and I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to pull money out. This is the extra bonus that we need for our deposit. So it's like I'm not pulling it out to buy a car. I'm
Yeah.
pulling it out for a holiday.
Yeah.
I'm pulling it out to get this deposit. So that's what I did. I pulled out the $20,000, and then with the JobKeeper plus our savings that we were saving for 6 months plus the superannuation money, we had enough money for a deposit.
Brilliant, brilliant. I'm curious to ask you, because I know there'll be so many people that are watching or listening that are in your position that you were in back then, but they're in that position now where they're like, "Oh, I've only got 10,000 saved." Like, I get DMs all the time on
Mm.
different social platforms, "PK, I wanna do your course, I wanna buy a property, I've got $10,000." I'm like, "Just hold your horses," like, there's no point wasting your money on my course if you can't afford a property, like, anytime
Yeah,
soon.
that's right.
So,
Yeah.
like, my question to you is, like, just from your own experience, you mentioned you really tidied up your bank accounts and things like that. What did you kind of, I don't know if it's too personal to ask, but like what did you cut back on, like in terms of expenditure, your household expenses, so that you could, increase that deposit and could increase that savings? I'm just asking from the purpose of like trying to inspire people who are like not quite there in terms of like 60,000, 70,000, $50,000 deposit
Yep.
and don't really know their path to get there.
Yeah. No, I did. We just cut back any unnecessary spending. So try to really reduce our takeaways, our eating out. If we did eat out, I tried to take it out some cash each week, so it didn't have all these itemized charges on our statements.
Right,
So there wasn't like, oh look, they're going to Uber Eats, they're doing this. So I just tried to have a little bit of cash withdrawn each week,
right.
and if we were going to eat out, I'd pay cash.
Okay, this is for borrowing capacity, you're saying?
Yeah. So that
Right.
way it didn't, if they look down at the list, they weren't seeing 10 times of takeaways or
Sure,
like
sure.
that. So not that we're eating 10 times a week, but
Yeah.
and I think we even cancelled gym memberships. I think I reduced the Netflix subscription, just little things, just to
Yeah.
really reduce the spending. And I think I also might have prepaid some bills as well. So when it got to submitting the 3 months worth of bank statements, it was just a lot cleaner.
Right. And I really vibe with what you're saying around, I mean, although I wasn't a forklift driver, I always tried to have like my headphones on and listening to different podcasts when I was starting and in the middle of my journey, because you just don't know what you can pick up. And like more than that, for me, it was like a sense of support, like a backbone or someone to lean on, even though they don't know who I am. But if I listen to that same podcaster or, different podcasts, but just kind of how do you say, like melting into that community, then I'm like, okay, at work or in my friend circle, no one's really this motivated, no one's really into like getting financially ahead, but I can kind of see that these podcasters or their guests are like my virtual friends, quote
Yeah,
unquote,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it feels nice. You're like, I just remember like always driving to work. This is when I was used to work for Virgin. I used to put my headphones on in the car and I was like, this is my happy space, my 20-minute drive to work. I'm like, that was like the happiest time during the day, because I was like, I was learning, and I was feeling like I was with like-minded people. So I
yeah.
think what you said I can definitely relate with, and I hope everyone can relate with, because yeah, it's kind of you need to be around the right association to get ahead.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But like I say, so like a couple of examples of just things that I picked out of podcasts was
Mhm.
when we decided to buy our first property, we were originally going to buy our principal place of residence. But as I said, we were living in an NRAS property, so we're only paying like $300 a week rent for
Can you
almost.
explain what that means for anyone who doesn't know?
Yeah, so I think the scheme is almost at its end, but basically it was a government scheme, National Rental Affordability Scheme. So the tenant paid, I believe, 75% of the market value, and the government would pay the other 25% direct to the landlord in a way of like a tax refund or something
Yeah.
like that.
Mhm.
But basically it meant that instead of us paying $420 a week rent, we only had to pay $300 a week rent. But
Mhm.
you had to be under a certain income level to do that.
Sure.
I think we just scraped under that level by about $1,000. So just got under there. So, but it enabled us to get this property. So we were like, we can't afford to buy where we are with the deposit that we had, and we're only 5 minutes away from work. So let's maybe look at buying investment properties. So that's when I started. I got the realestate.com map, and I'm just scanning all around the map. Put in the price, and I every night after work I was just laying in bed and just doing my research, and oh, that's an area, and I keep an eye on it, keep an eye on it.
Mhm.
Eventually found a property at Logan Home,
Mhm.
and so straight away I identified that this looks like it's actually under market value. And I had a look at properties in that. There's a gated community,
Right.
separate standalone houses, but in a gated community. And straight
Mhm.
away I thought this property is at least 40 to 50,000 underneath what the other properties are selling for.
Yeah.
Raced down there, found out that it had been vacant for 2 months, and this is at the height of COVID. Everyone's panicking and
This is 2020, like mid
uh,
2020 or something.
yeah, it's like September,
Right.
September. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And
So
around that time, it's like unemployment's going up and like the economy's going down. And there's like, yeah, this is
yeah,
the
yeah.
peak COVID, the first
That
wave.
that that was the kind of peak panic, and everyone's
Yeah.
going, "Oh, the market's going to crash." So I saw an opportunity where other people might have panicked, but I saw an opportunity. I thought this is a great time to buy. So we were ready. We had our deposit.
Yeah.
I found out that the owner was in New Zealand. They just wanted to sell the property. It had been vacant for a little while, and they'd had a couple of contracts crashed. So
Right.
I'm ready for this property. Went in there straight away, inspected it, knew it was vacant. So one of the things that I heard on a previous podcast was if it's vacant, put in a clause there that you could actually go in after it's unconditional and do some renovations.
Yeah.
So I put that clause in there, and once it went unconditional, we went in there because it had been a rental for 20 years.
Hmm.
So we went in there. It had the old beige walls and kind of like very 2000s. So we went in there, spent maybe $2,500, fresh coat of paint, nice bright white paint, and just changed the kitchen cupboard door handles and just kind of made it a little bit fresher.
Sure.
Even there was like an old air conditioner on the wall, worked great, but it was just discoloured. It had that yellow and kind of
Yeah,
plastic.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, so we took that off, spray painted it, made it look new because it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It just looked old. So we had it already. It was an on-site manager. He already had it advertised for us, and we had a tenant move in 2 days after settlement.
Amazing. So it was just vacant because it was like cosmetically it didn't look the best. That was the reason
Yeah,
it was vacant?
it moved. The tenant moved out. I think the New Zealand owners decided to sell it, and then they just had a couple of people. Their contract fell over with finance or
Right, right.
whatever. I was actually a backup contract. So
Okay.
we went in there and there was already a contract on the property, and I put it in a backup contract because there was a single mother. She was trying to draw equity out of her parents' property, so that had the value up, et cetera, et cetera.
Right,
So
right.
that fell over, and then we got the contract.
There you go. I mean, that just shows that, if even if a property is under contract or you haven't been successful as the top bidder, keep pursuing a property if you really think it's valuable. Because yeah, contracts crash all the time and people
Yeah.
change their minds all the time. I did want to ask you, you said you were like really confident that this is the best time to buy property at that kind of peak despair moment when everyone was watching like zombie apocalyptic movies and things like that. What made you so confident? Because like I can understand if someone has been in the financial markets, is super money savvy, and is like, okay, when something like this happens, COVID or mass lockdown or huge recessions, then the next thing that happens is obviously huge monetary stimulus, fiscal stimulus, and then asset prices rise. Like people who are kind of in the know, they kind of know that, and maybe you did as well. But I'm just curious, like, what made you so confident, given your background of, like, you hadn't really invested so much.
Yeah. Again, it was just listening to the podcast and just getting knowledge, and I just felt that people would panic sell,
Right.
and that was the situation. I identified straight away that this property was easily under market value. And again, I used the building and pest to actually get another $7,000 off the purchase price as well.
Oh, nice.
So I knew that even though I got it at a steal, I'm still going to try to get more of you.
You
So
listen to a lot of podcasts. You accumulated a lot of those golden
yeah,
nuggets, and it's
yeah.
great.
So
It's fantastic to hear.
so, that's what I did, and so that property went through. In the meantime, I was still doing more research. I was replying to different forums on Facebook about property investing, and I come across an idea about investing in self-managed super fund,
Right.
which I never heard of before. So I started doing some research about that. And yeah, the next step is what I actually transferred and started up my own self-managed super fund
Okay.
and bought a property within that.
Right. Is that one in Brisbane as well?
Yeah, so that's on the north side of Brisbane. That's in Petrie.
Okay. Nice.
Again, that was another little place that we were looking at as well. And I identified, and I didn't really get this one under too much on the market value, but I got it at a good price,
Right.
a solid price. And this is the problem with like these NRAS schemes and probably the defence schemes and NDIS, etc. Um, the original owner, I think they bought the property for 360,000. We got it for 250.
Wow.
Yeah, 8 years later. So
Okay.
they were obviously sold on the big promise of negative gearing
Yeah.
and they paid the developer price. But I
Right.
yeah so they made a substantial loss on that one.
Okay. Well, just goes
Yes.
to show, but try to buy established properties unless you're
Yeah.
developing them yourself and not just paying someone else
So
to
that so
do that
that
for you.
so that property sold. I think it was 10 days after the other one. So I was
Oh,
like,
no
yeah.
way. So you're actually
So
doing two almost simultaneously.
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
That's crazy. It's almost like, you took a break for 20 years and then you just dive right
Yeah,
in head
yeah.
first.
It's like I just saw an opportunity, and I guess that's what my biggest thing is, like, if you see the opportunity, take it,
Mhm.
and that's what I saw, and I came across different information. I was like, oh, I never expected that, and
Yeah.
I didn't have a big super balance. I had like maybe 110 after my $20,000 withdrawal.
Right.
And everyone was saying, "Oh, you need at least $200,000 to
Yeah.
do," and I inquired, and they said, "No, that's just like a recommendation."
Yeah.
And again, I'm like, "Well, I see an opportunity here that I could do this and buy a property."
Mhm.
Uh, so that's what I did. So and again, that property, I got it for 250. It's probably worth 450 now.
Sure. And probably the same as the Logan home one. Is it like, how much did you buy that for? Do you know how much it's worth
Yeah. So
now?
after the building and pest kind of knocked down on the price, it was 245, and it's probably worth 450, 460 at the moment.
Right. And are they kind of paying for themselves? I mean, the super one, you have to put in, I assume, like 30% deposit or something like that. Um,
Yeah, I think it was at 20%.
20% even under your SMSF?
Yep, yep. I
Oh,
think it's
nice.
yeah. I think it was about an $80,000 deposit.
Right.
But it's all self-sufficient. That property, I'm actually paying off aggressively.
Okay.
So all the funds available go into that, and I'm 52 now. My aim is by the time I'm 60, it's completely paid off. So
Right.
the goal is to pay that property off within 10 years.
Okay. So is that your strategy over the next eight or 10 years, that you just want to keep these two and aggressively pay them off, or are you looking to add more to the portfolio?
Yeah. So what happened next with us is that the property that we were renting, the NRAS property that we were renting, the
Mm.
owner just decided to sell this property. So we were like, "I'm going to move,"
Yeah.
and then it's like, "Ah, we might be able to pull equity out of Logan Home."
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we went to the mortgage, got it, the broker, we got it revalued. Oh, okay, yeah, we've got a deposit there. Okay, and now do we have the serviceability? Our serviceability was a little bit low, and then we looked like we couldn't buy where we're living.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to a different broker, and he did his magic and said, "Oh, you can offer $40,000 more." Oh, okay, so we put in an offer of 400 for the place that we're in now.
Yeah.
Again, knowing that the other properties in this complex are selling for 440, 450,
Mm-hmm.
and the owner accepted it. So
Nice.
it was an off-market kind of deal. It didn't go officially to market.
Right.
So the owner accepted it, and again, it was because it was one of his NRAS property. He bought it for 387, and 9 years later, sold it for 400. So again,
Yeah.
mate, and he's paid the retailer price,
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so now we're in here. We have the investment property in the self-managed super fund, and the one in Logan Home.
Gotcha, gotcha. And, what's the kinda dynamic with your partner, with your wife? I'm just asking this once again because oftentimes there's kind of one person in a relationship that spearheads the finances, and the other person can either be supportive in the background or, like, a little bit antagonistic, like, "Oh, what's the point in taking all this risk?" What was that kind of if you're comfortable sharing, what was that
Yeah,
kind of a dynamic in your case?
yeah. Initially, she was very, very hesitant to get into debt because, and I had to explain to her about good debt and bad debt.
Mhm.
And then once she understood that and what it was actually going to do for us, she came on board.
Right.
She, like anyone, she hates filling in all the forms
Of
and
course.
all the requests. Like, oh, why do I have to kind of provide these forms for? But she knew that it was in the best interest.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're basically, we're on board together as far as I'm the one that does all the research, but then
Right.
I'll talk to her and say, hey, what about this place here or whatever,
Yeah.
uh, and then yeah, so we both have vision of hopefully getting at least one more property.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice one, nice one. It's
but
always helpful, when both people are on the same page, even though one person's maybe a little bit more passive, the other one's more active. It's really helpful over the long term for a sustainable portfolio. Like you were saying, for both of them at least to be on the same page eventually, because yeah, like when you refinance, there's more paperwork. It might be
yeah,
interest rates go up and might be negative geared for like a little while before like rents rise again. Not that that's the case in your instance, but it really helps. I really liked how, yeah, you just educate the other person and you just
yeah,
let the data and the logic kind of do the talking as opposed to like, just trust me and
yeah.
like, I'll pay you back or whatever.
Yeah, so even though that at the moment we're not in the market to go again because of the interest rate, right? We just don't have the serviceability.
Hmm.
I every week, probably even every day, I'm still checking out the market.
Really?
I'm checking out the prices of our three properties. I'm checking out all different areas, and that way, if we are in a position, at least I have a little bit of a background of.
Mhm.
I don't have to try to do catch up.
Yeah.
And I'm still listening to property podcasts every day.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so it's just research. You've got to do your research, and that it's either do it yourself, pay someone else, do a course such as yours. But you've got to do the research. If you go
Yeah.
in if you go in blind, you're just going to you're going to fail.
No, 100%. I really like that actually that you just put the work in. Like, you don't have to do the course, you
Yeah,
can just put the
that's it.
work in yourself
Yeah.
and that's what you did. And I think it's sort of
like,
like,
like I say, we've made mistakes. We've made mistakes. There's like in hindsight, there's things that we probably should have done that would have a better outcome. Such as when we bought the property at Loganholme. At that time, my wife was still a foreign resident, so we didn't put her on the title to avoid the foreign residence tax.
mhm,
But that means that if we sell that property, there's all the capital gain goes to me.
yeah.
I'm the higher income earner, and I also pay child support, so it gets added onto my child support
All
as
right.
well. So it's like if we sell that property, I would actually love to sell that property right now to split it into two deposits for
Right.
another. But we're a little bit hamstrung by it because it's like if we sell it, it's gonna get taken away by capital gains tax and child support. So
Right.
it's probably a 10-year um, investment at least for that one
Sure.
to get past. So that's one thing. Yeah, it's just there's mistakes along the way, and
Mhm.
the more research you do, the better.
And how was your process? Because I know you said you went through a broker or two. How did you build that team around you of like the conveyancer, mortgage broker? I mean, I'm sure you got some accounting or tax advice at some point. Did you just kind of go on different forums, different podcasts, and trial
Yeah,
and error?
yeah. Again, on lots of different forums and Facebook kind of forums and pages and self-managed super fund pages and all this type of thing, and just lots of reading, lots of research. I'm lucky that I have a lot of downtime in my position sometimes. I hope my boss doesn't watch this. Um, yeah, so it's just reading and research, and if it's something you don't know, just reach out to somebody.
Yeah.
Uh, like if you don't know it, like get help.
Yeah.
So
Don't guess and don't hope it's going to work out. Just ask. There's always someone that's there to help you. Like someone who's
yeah,
more knowledgeable. They may not be an expert, they may not be perfect, but if they just know a little bit more than you, then there's something you can learn from them.
that's
That,
right. Yeah, yeah,
that's always
yeah.
been my philosophy. No, that's amazing. And so are you still driving forklifts at the moment?
Yes, yeah, yeah. I've
Mhm.
got today is a day off. I only work 4 days a week, 10-hour days. So
All right.
today's a day off. But yeah, so that's our kind of our journey at the moment. As I said, just with the rate rises, we're kind of really had to put a bit of a stop. It's we are feeling the squeeze. There's no doubt about that. Like
Hmm.
probably a lot of people.
Hmm.
But we don't have to sell or anything like that. But we definitely have had that talk about discretionary spending and like, do we need this? Do we need to eat out? Do we need to do these type of things? So,
Yeah, right.
but hopefully that'll change soon. But
Yeah,
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
And
I-
what's kind of like your biggest advice to someone who, let's say, rewind back to when you're in the year 2020, or sorry, year 2000 or year 2001, year 2002, you've picked up that property, right? And you sold it, and then like you didn't really do anything for the next 15, almost 20 years. For someone who is in that phase of their life, like let's say much younger, they're not sure about real estate, they're not even sure about whether real estate investing can work, or they're just treading water. Like maybe they're not really focusing on saving to build a deposit and buy their first investment or their first place to live in. They're just renting year after year after, not investing, just renting, because rent
mm,
money is dead money unless you're rent vesting, right?
yeah,
Like,
that's
what's
right.
kind of like some words of wisdom? Because you're all obviously you've been there and done that now. Something that you can say to help these types of folks.
Yeah, like I say, it comes down to like if you want anything, you have to make some sacrifices. And at that time, I wasn't making those sacrifices. I was living for the weekend, living for my holidays, you know. So yeah, it's sacrifices. Reach out, like if you have family that are able to lend you some money to get even a partial deposit together, that is better than nothing. There's a lot of like schemes out there at the moment for first home buyers, etc., etc. Just if you can get your foot in the market, like I say, we only bought a property for $250,000. So you know we didn't buy like this $1 million mansion, you
Hmm.
know. So we bought the best property that we could with the money that we had,
Yeah.
and that's like, and we were rent vesting. So
Yeah.
like if you're living at home as a 20 something and you're still living at home, like try to put some money away. Try to get enough deposit where you could buy an investment property, rent vest for a while, watch that property hopefully grow if you've done the research, and you've got a head start.
Yeah. Do the best with what you have. Like you don't
That,
need
that's the-
so
that's
many resources. Just try to be resourceful, and like just because you can't buy in the place that you live, like let's say Brisbane or Sydney or whatever, there's other places where still to this day you can buy properties under 300, 350,
oh,
four hundred
definitely
k you know,
definitely
whether it's Perth or South Australia or regional Queensland. And obviously do your research. Don't just buy and whoop whoop. But yeah, it's not, I don't want to say excuse because sounds quite aggressive, but it's really not like there's no reason just to sit on your hands. There's always properties that you can afford, provided you've sacrificed and you've built a deposit of like 50, 60, $70,000.
Yeah, well, I think our deposit was $45,000.
Oh, there you go.
That's what we had. I think it was about $45,000, and that was enough to get us started.
Yeah.
So it wasn't earth shattering,
Hmm.
but that was enough to. And then I was able to identify a property that was the best property that we could buy for that money.
Yeah, that's so good to hear. I really like this story. It sort of shows how, you know, you can also recover from a false start, like, you know, and it's never too late. Like you could have rested on your laurels and said, "Oh, look, I'm almost 50 now, you know, my life's gone away from me. There's no point going down this like financial independence or setting myself up for retirement. I just like wait for the dole or wait for my pension from the government." But no, you took your future into your own hands, and credit to both yourself and your wife as well. So I really love to hear it, and hopefully this does serve to inspire people and educate people and also give them the realization of what's possible. It's not groundbreaking. It's not like this,
Uh,
oh, 10 properties in 2 years kind of
yeah,
story.
yeah,
But this is just like reality. This is what everyday people are doing. They're actually hustling and they're actually making sacrifices for their future. And I hope people can take a leaf out of that.
yeah. Well, basically, in the space of 3 years, we've gone from renting to now we're at a position with the market values that if we sold where we live now, paid out the loan, and went in and lived at our investment property at Logan Home, we'd
Mhm.
almost be mortgage free in the space of 3 years.
That's crazy. So
We'd have
so
like a $50,000 mortgage.
uh, so from renting to like being basically mortgage free if you wanted to, like in 3 years. Like that's actually something remarkable.
Yeah, so it is possible, and I'm no financial whiz kid or anything like that. So it is possible. So if there's anyone that's at like my age or well, even older, younger, it doesn't matter. Like it's never too late.
Yeah,
But you just got to make a start. And if you identify a chance, yeah, you have to take that chance. You
take
have to
that
take the
chance.
chance
That's what you did. You
with
saw the
education.
opportunity and you ran with it.
Yeah, it's got to be an educated chance. Like,
Right.
you don't want to just risk your money. It's like you have to do the research.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate your time, and if it's okay with you, when I do post this, of course, on the podcast, but on the Facebook group, I'll tag you. And
Yeah, sure.
if people want to reach out, and just to be clear, like Steve has not done my course, and Steve
No,
has
no,
nothing to sell you. Like he's not like a buyer's agent or mortgage broker in disguise or anything like that.
no,
He's
no.
literally just like just an everyday person who's
Uh,
literally just volunteered to try to help everyone, which I really, really appreciate. So yeah, if you just want like real advice from someone who has no agenda, DM him or put
yeah,
a question in the
yeah,
comments
that's
on that
fine. That's
video.
fine. I've got plenty of time at work.
Yeah.
Sorry, boss.
But no, I really appreciate it, Steve. And yeah, I think there needs to be more people in the world like you. It's really cool how you're giving back.
Yeah, no problem at all.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And hopefully this is kind of different. I haven't really done this before, but if you do want these kinds of just real stories from real people, warts and all, successes, failures, and they're not selling anything. So there's no like lining of agenda, then please let me know in the comments, leave a yes. And that will just bring you more and more of this type of value so that you can, be educated. Because like Steve alluded to as well, the best investment is really in yourself. And that's exactly what he did. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you, Steve, again.
No problem.